So as a kid, I would play in my grandmother's house. And my grandmother's house had a third floor. And on the third floor, there was a room. And in that room was a closet. And behind the closet, there were some clothes. And through the clothes was a door. And through the door was an attic. And in the attic was a box. And in the box were old pictures and medals of my great-uncle Paul. And my great-uncle Paul was a lieutenant in the Army, and he fought in the Second World War. He was killed in April of 1945 in Luxembourg, about 3 weeks before the war ended. So it was my grandmother's brother. So his father, my great-grandfather, when he learned of his son's death, every night would go down to 30th Street Station and wait for soldiers returning from the war. And when he did that, he would ask them if they wanted to come home to the suburbs with him and have dinner with his family. Just strangers. But he liked being among them, and he hoped one of them might have a story about his son. So that floored me. Still does. I grew up, I idolized my great-uncle Paul. I spent hours in my grandmother's backyard crawling around on the ground hunting Nazis. And since there were very few Nazis in suburban Philadelphia, I basically hunted her dog, which in fairness was a German Shepherd, so it all worked out. But I craved any story I could get about him, you know, the great athlete who was the great soldier, my great-uncle Paul. So eventually my parents got me into sports because it was normal at that age, and they were probably concerned about their son crawling around hunting imaginary Nazis. So I wasn't that awkward growing up. I was smaller and I had hair, but I would like sports. I just was never very good at sports. This was like the late 80s and early 90s, so parents weren't concerned whether you liked sports or not. They basically put a uniform on you and dropped you off at a field. So I actually liked away games the most because when you made mistakes, the crowd would cheer, and that was basically my extent of it. Like, organized sports were a terrific way of preparing children for a lifetime of judgment and failure. So eventually, after many losing seasons, the kids on my basketball team invited me to go play war with them in Valley Forge. I was 12 years old, right? And this was my moment. I had prepared my entire life for this fake war. And we went, and I just killed. I mean, I literally killed. I shot a bunch of kids. It was great. I hid. We won. If there was a winner, there was a naked baby there, because that happens sometimes at Valley Forge. I was 12 years old, and I was in the back of a gray Buick station wagon when we got back from war. And it was one of those seats with I was in the way back, you know, with the seats that flip down, and I faced outward. Right? So I was 12 years old. I was with my friends. I remember this distinctively. It was this great moment. We were coming back from battle. I was with my friends, and it was high fives and slap backs, and I was with my brothers in arms, and it was just such a great moment. I was like, this is what it must feel like to come back from war. I was the first to get dropped off, and the station wagon pulled in front of my parents' house. And some anonymous father figure blur from childhood came around and dropped the back gate down, and I scooted to the edge. And when I got to the edge, I turned around and said, "Bye, see you later, love you." And I just stopped. It was the exact same farewell I gave my mom when she would drop me off at school in the morning. And at first, it was just silence, right? Like, my friends were trying to comprehend what happened. Like, did Sean just tell us he loved us? Like, he's a guy. We're guys. We have to attack. This isn't right. And it wasn't laughter at first. That came. But it was just noise. It was just like shrieking and shouting. And one kid was like licking the window. And they were just so excited about this moment. They were just expressing their joy. And I just fell to the ground. And I'm sitting in the street as the car goes down the street. And I hear them, their voices trailing after. "Bye, Sean. We love you. We love you. Queer." And I just composed myself, went in the house, packed a bag, brought it downstairs, laid it at the feet of my mom, and instructed her to get her affairs in order because we would be moving. And then I just burst into tears. So I'm 32 years old. Technically, I'm an adult. Technically, I am old enough to be a parent to my former 12-year-old self. I can vote, I can smoke cigarettes, I can drink alcohol, I can actually go to a real war. But I always think about that moment when I was 12 years old. Just kills me. I was 12 years old, and it was the first worst moment of my life. I wasn't going to be a great athlete. I wasn't going to be a great soldier. I was never going to be my great-uncle Paul. And it always stuck with me. But now I realize I'm 32. I'm 8 years older than my great-uncle Paul was when he died. He was 24 years old. He was a 24-year-old kid that I know nothing about. He was memories and pictures and medals in a box. I realized my great-grandfather didn't go down to that train station and bring strangers home to hear stories about what a great athlete he was or what a brave soldier he was. He was a 24-year-old kid. He loved his son. He wanted to be surrounded by people who looked like him, reminded of him, and maybe knew a story or something about him. So right now I have a niece and nephew of my own, and I think about them all the time. And I think about one day when they have kids, maybe they're playing in my brother's attic, and they find a box of my stuff. You know, what's going to be in there? What kind of memories are going to be in that box? So I don't look back. I look ahead to the man I'm going to be when other people look back. Thanks.